Video game preservation is a topic that we need to start discussing, because this isn't just about us preserving the games that we played in the past and having easier ways to play them in modern day. It is about preserving them for a generation to come so they can see how this industry has evolved over the years. Video games aren't just a form of entertainment, they are a type of art. Much like literature and film, it is important to study the games of the past and understand what works and what doesn't. There is a reason that so many people enjoy the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. Not only did he craft an amazing world, but fantasy authors to this day use his writing style and ways of world building in order to create worlds of their own. And whether or not you want to admit it, authors like Brandon Sanderson and Robert Jordan wouldn't exist had it not been for the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. Same goes for filmography. Stanley Kubrick has innovated a lot of the ideas and shots that are used in modern filmmaking. There is a reason Stanley Kubrick is considered one of the most prolific directors when it comes to film. And much like film, much like literature, it is important that people are able to go back and have an idea of what worked and what didn't, because whether or not Nintendo or Konami wants to admit it, they were the juggernauts, the pioneers of this industry, and it is their blood, sweat, and tears that are going to continue to teach generations to come the proper ways to make video games. There's also an argument that needs to be made about the price of video games. With each passing console generation, the price of these games start to skyrocket. GameCube and PlayStation 2 games are starting to become increasingly more expensive. Games such as Skies of Arcadia, Rule of Rose, and Haunting Ground all ask for a ridiculous price online, with no viable way to play them other than downloading them off of a ROM site or spending over $200 for a used copy. And nobody should have to spend that much money on a video game in order to play it. Say what you will about ROM sites, whether or not you are against emulation or not, but this is the only viable way that we have right now to be able to experience these games, and I find that to be a problem. I asked some other YouTubers and Twitch streamers to join me in on this conversation and get their ideas of why they thought video game preservation was so important, so I'm going to turn the time over to them.
It's an important thing to preserve the video games that we played in our past for the generations that come after us. They honestly need the access to what we played back in the day, even to the games that we might have not been fans of. Whether we believe it or not, some of those people might be the same ones making the popular games we play tomorrow. So it's important to give them all the tools that they need to learn and experience the best and the worst aspects of gaming's history.
Art is one of the largest influences to the visual and social identity of any culture. Whether modern or ancient, art's influence is a brush and palette that never dries out, coloring the world around us. Preserving video games isn't just about seeing our toys and our entertainment be playable generations from now. It's about the preservation of art. The preservation of art to perpetuate the cycle of inspiration and influence that only art can create. It's about preserving this moment in time, however it will be seen years from now, so that we can create a change.
Game preservation gives generations past a chance to experience something in gaming that they may have never even known existed if it wasn't for the ability to access older titles. And for me personally, having the ability to go back and play said older titles gives me the opportunity to relive a point in my life. You know, whether it be for better or for worse.
Man, I need to get my classic horror game fix in, but I've played through all these already. Hey Space, Ladeborough Haunting Grounds.
It's ScoprioCesar now, and no.
Then how about that obscure?
How about no?
What the hell, man? Then how about that one?
Oh, hell no!
I thought we were friends. What gives?
Are you kidding me? Do you have any idea how much you would owe me if you scratched up any of these games?
How much?
Enough to cover my mortgage, electric, and internet bill for the month.
Seriously?
Indeed, Rule of Rose sent me back $325 US on the aftermarket, and that's without the manual.
That's a load of BS.
No, it's a horrible side effect because video game companies don't believe in video game preservation.
You're absolutely right. It's a sad reality that we live in. So anyway, can I borrow it?
Sure, one copy of Frogger, The Great Quest coming right at you. Think fast.
In my opinion, I think game preservation is important for two reasons. One, it allows gamers to actually experience titles that will never be re-released, ever, like Skies of Arcadia. If you did not own Skies of Arcadia on Dreamcast, you had a shot with Legends, but guess what? If you passed on Legends, you're screwed. But also for future development of games. Can you imagine a world where YouTube walkthroughs is the only way that we can experience a game? How would a game be developed by watching how you think it plays rather than feeling it and remembering how it felt?
The preservation of knowledge has always been important, no matter which medium you're striking it through, whether it's art, whether it's literature, whether it's history, whether it's music. It's always important to go back and see where our missteps are, what the foundation is, where we can innovate, where we can replicate, those types of things. It's no different with the video game industry. We got to preserve these titles. We got to find ways to break through these legality barriers. We got to find these ways to break through these software barriers. All these issues are important for preserving what is now become our history, what has become our art, what has become part of our culture, what has become a massive, massive entertainment industry. How can we hope to go forward if we don't have anything to look back on, nothing to look back into the past and see?
Hey guys, Soldier First Class here. As you can tell, obviously I'm a little bit of a collector when it comes to video games, and I feel that a lot of times the preservation of old games like Chrono Trigger and stuff like that, where Steam has done a good job, Square Enix has done a good job of making that game available to modern audiences, there's a lot of classic games that just aren't quite there yet. I feel like Gamecast kinda has a good idea behind preserving the old games, as it's got Xbox games, Xbox 360, Xbox One, and in the future Xbox Series X, and I feel like that's a good model to have. I don't necessarily feel that a subscription base is the greatest, but I do feel like preservation of these classic games, such as Super Mario RPG. That game was on the Wii U Virtual Console, but we haven't gotten it on the Switch console yet. And it feels like if they had like a generalized, not server, or some kind of program that they could put on every one of their consoles that allows you to play these games, I feel like the preservation of old games and getting people into them would be a lot better. I think there's a lot of ways that companies could do this. Even if they wanted to charge a subscription fee for something like this, maybe $5 a month or something, and you get, all these old games. But the problem is, too, that a lot of companies want to bring out these limited edition, or they want to put out special collector's editions of their product, and they want to sell that for a profit. And unfortunately, that means that some games just do not make it back to audiences in the world, and that is unfortunate. But I do believe that preservation of old games is definitely an important thing that we really need to hit on in the next coming generations of gaming.
That was some excellent points by my fellow content creators, but there is one last clip that I do want to leave with you guys in this video, and it comes from NitroRad's Echo Knight Beyond review. After all, it was comments he made at the end of that video that was the inspiration for this video, so I think it's only natural that we include his thoughts in this video as well.
But as it stands currently, there's never been a re-release, unlike the first game that at least got released on PS3, and the game is expensive as hell to own a hard copy. So let's be honest, if they're not going to make their old games available again at an affordable price, people have no choice but to emulate it. I'm starting to get really friggin' sick of this, guys. Like, I'm not gonna lie. It breaks my goddamn heart to get to the end of every one of these videos just to have to say that there's no feasible way of playing this anymore. Game preservation is becoming a problem. It's a topic I've been seeing more and more, and I think it's a conversation we gotta be having. We shouldn't have to resort to piracy in order to play these things, and we shouldn't have to deal with this Disney Vault bullshit these companies have been doing. Publishers, please, make your old games available on newer platforms at an affordable price, because until that happens, as time keeps going on, there's only going to be less and less copies available, and the prices are just going to keep going up and up and up. And that's a problem.
Video game preservation just isn't about preserving games of the past. It is about leaving a legacy behind for generations to come, so they can see how this industry has evolved. Much like I said at the beginning, film and literature, people are able to see how films have progressively gotten better and different styles and how they evolved, and video games are very much the same. Like James said, giving the developers the tools that they need to experience the best and worst of gaming's history is very important as well. And as Gerzon said, can you imagine trying to get a feel of how a game played just by simply watching a YouTube video? Take a look at Cuphead. Its clear influence was Contra and Mega Man. I don't think the developers of those games just decided to one day fire up a YouTube channel and see how Mega Man and Contra played and then make a game like it. I think those developers were very familiar with how those games played, because the inspiration with that game is clearly evident with those two titles. And I wouldn't be surprised if the developers had found some way to go back and replay those games and get a feel for how the controls worked and how they could improve upon them and replicate some of those same ideas. That's one of the major reasons I think gaming preservation is so important. And like I said, people want to go back and replay games of the past, but they don't want to spend ridiculous amounts of money. This is a big personal reason for me on why gaming preservation is so important. Back when I got into Final Fantasy on the PlayStation 1, Final Fantasy 9, Final Fantasy 8, and Final Fantasy 7 were the very first ones that I played. I had a desire to go back and replay the ones on the Super Nintendo and NES that I missed. Unfortunately, those were pretty ridiculously priced already by the time I had gotten into them, and to be able to convince my parents to buy Final Fantasy IV and Final Fantasy VI on the Super Nintendo for the prices that they were asking was going to be very difficult. But being able to sell them on $40 was a lot easier. Had it not been for Anthology and had it not been for Chronicles, I would have never gotten away to play those past titles. I was really grateful that Square Enix was willing to put those titles on the PlayStation so I could play them. Taking a look at Atlas this year, they released Persona 4 Golden on Steam, and a lot of people downloaded that game. A lot of people got to experience that game. Stuck on the PlayStation Vita, people who played Persona 5 was finally able to experience that game had they not had a chance to before. There is clearly a demand to be able to play retro games or older games on modern hardware. And more companies need to be aware of this. Say what you will about Skyrim and Resident Evil 4 being re-released on every single console, but at least Bethesda and Capcom get the idea that people want to be able to play those games. And if you own a console, you're going to be able to play them, and that is a smart move. Both Skyrim and Resident Evil 4 have done things for the video game industry. Skyrim has really innovated the way that open world games have been able to have been made. That was a lot of people's first introduction to open world, and what inspired a lot of people to create open world games. Resident Evil 4 innovated the over-the-shoulder mechanic that so many action-adventure games use today. It was that over-the-shoulder movement in Resident Evil 4 that has inspired such works as the Batman Arkham games. So there is clear influence from older games in newer games as well. And with Resident Evil 8 coming out, it is more important than ever that Resident Evil 4 gets a chance to be playable. And with the PlayStation 5 being backwards compatible with PlayStation 4 games and the whole Resident Evil collection being up on PSN, it is going to be easier than ever for people to get a chance to go back and replay those games and see how the series got its start. It is ideas like this that make me happy, because developers clearly do see that there is a demand for those games. I get into a brand new series, the first thing I do is go back and take a look at how many entries I've missed and see if there's viable ways to play them. Because I do want to be able to experience the series. Whether or not I beat those titles is a different story, but to be able to get a feel of how they played and see how the series has evolved makes me appreciate modern entries even more. And despite all that, we have companies like Nintendo trying to take down ROM sites because they are stealing their intellectual property and downloading them without their permission. This is frustrating because Nintendo doesn't do anything about it. They attack these ROM sites, but they don't make their games downloadable on next-gen hardware. We don't see GameCube games being put on the Nintendo Switch. We don't see Nintendo making sure that that catalog of games is readily available to download, and it's frustrating as somebody who wants to be able to play these games. At the end of the day, if companies aren't going to make their games available on hardware or make an attempt to put them on modern hardware, they need to accept that the only way we are going to be able to preserve this industry is through emulation and ROMs. And as hard as that is for some people to understand, it's not about getting free games. It is about preserving the legacy and making sure generations to come get a chance to be able to play the games that we grew up with. And making sure that new fans of series have a viable way to be able to play the games of those past series or those past games that they may learn about and be able to play. Nothing's more frustrating than talking about a game and there being no viable way for my subscribers, people who stumble across my video and watch a review, to not be able to play that game. It is frustrating as a content creator because you want more people to experience that game. And if we take game preservation seriously and more developers start taking it seriously, that allows more and more people to be able to play these games of the past. Take a look at what's happening on the digital distribution websites such as Steam and PlayStation's network. There are a lot of games that are being taken down. Alpha Protocol recently got taken down on Steam because Sega lost the rights to the song Turn Up the Radio by Autograph and was no longer able to sell that game because they couldn't secure the rights. I find that to be an extremely frustrating problem, especially where movies from decades past have licensed music in them, but that's not a problem. Why is it a problem for video games? This is something that needs to be corrected. The only way you're now able to play that game is if you own it on Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, or have it on PC. I find that extremely frustrating. This is a side effect of what will happen if all games go completely digital, which is the future that many game developers are pushing for. If you're a developer listening to this, please, by all means, if you have connections, let's find a way to fix this problem. Because otherwise we are going to, further on down the future, have an entire library of lost media that we cannot get back. Films already have it, but not to the extent, because unlike films, you are able to go to a website like Amazon and more than likely find your film, your favorite film, and have it shipped to your house. Video games don't have that luxury. Once a console's dead, that console generation pretty much dies with it, and the game prices only go up higher and higher. There is no way to get those on modern hardware and be able to replay them unless developers release them. That creates a problem. This is a talking point that I think a lot more people need to be involved in. Let me know your thoughts down below, what you guys think about this. If you are interested in sharing your voice, use the hashtag on Twitter, GamePreservationImportance. Hashtag GamePreservationImportance, and let your voice be heard. Share this video with friends, family, people you know who are passionate about video games, and let's get our voices heard. Use that hashtag on Twitter and tweet at your favorite video game developers and let them know either through a comment or a video on your cell phone about why you think gaming preservation is important and why gaming preservation matters to you. If you're a YouTuber and want to make a response video to this, by all means, please do so. I want to really get this topic moving because this is a topic we need to start thinking about. Because like literature and like film, it is important that we preserve the legacy of video games for up-and-coming generations to understand how video games fundamentally work and be able to ensure that gamers will always have a way to be able to play the games that they grew up playing as children. Because much like I like going back and watching films from my childhood, I like to be able to play games from my childhood as well. And without viable ways to do so, well, it's frustrating. And not everybody is going to have a high-end PC in order to run emulators to do so. So, thoughts, opinions, comments, leave those down below in the description box or comment box. Links to my socials down below in the description, as well as links to all of the YouTubers and Twitch streamers who joined in with me on this video. You guys have been watching Gaming with Spoons. For more videos just like this one and news, reviews, and discussions, hit subscribe, ring that bell notification so you don't miss it when my videos go live, and most importantly, stay happy, be happy, game happy. Spoons is checking out.